Hello, and welcome to the Art of Craft, inspiring game creations. Woo! Thank you all for coming to this panel on Sunday of PAX Day 4. If this is not your first day, then I'm sure you're exhausted, and I appreciate you finding the energy to come here. I also appreciate PAX for hosting this wonderful event. I appreciate our enforcers and sound crew, including Barry, Rufo, J-Bar, and Matt. And I'm sorry, what's your name? Hi, Epi. Thank you. Yay. And I also want to acknowledge the land that we are on. We are residing on the ancestral and unceded land of the Massachusetts people, whose name was appropriated by this Commonwealth. We pay respect to the Massachusetts elders, past and present, and we acknowledge the truth of violence perpetrated in the name of this country and make a commitment to uncovering that truth. So thank you. This is the Art of Craft, inspiring game creations, and I can tell just from looking at the audience that many of you are wearing apparel or other accessories that show your love for this wonderful pastime and medium. How many people here make their own crafts based on video games? How many people want to be able to make their own crafts based on video games? Yeah, it's such a great time. I mean, especially if you're like watching a Let's Play or something, your hand's got to be doing something, so might as well pick up some crocheting or knitting. And I have a wonderful team here of individuals who do this for fun. They make scarves, pillows, blankets, wallpaper, cakes, etc. And we're going to be talking today about how they go around doing all this, how they use video games as their inspiration, the challenges and opportunities they face, and how they got started doing what they do. So let's go down the line and introduce our panelists, starting on the far right here. We have Chris Gonzalez, a.k.a. Gonzo, of Dapper Pixo. Hey, Gonzo.
Hey, how's it going?
So what is it that you do, sir?
Create video game-inspired T-shirts and little goodies along the side as well.
Nice. And I have a couple of your examples here. You can see on the TV in front of you as well. These are some of the shirts that you've made, right?
Correct, yes.
And you work with another organization as well, in addition to Dapper Pixel?
Past couple of years, I was helping out the Boston Festival of Indie Games with their T-shirts as well, coming up with their yearly designs.
Nice. And what does this Kickstart me? Are you currently raising funds?
No, this was not at the moment. I am working towards another line, but these images were from the Kickstarter I had a couple of years ago to kickstart the Nintendo-inspired T-shirts. So came out with pins as well to go along with it, but yeah, that was successful and sold out of all of those.
Nice, congratulations. How long have you been doing this?
Ooh, 5 years? That's the quick answer, but I'd have to double check again.
Is this your full-time gig?
No, I do have a full-time job as I work as a project manager at an architecture firm. And then this is the love side of things too, where I just enjoy creating T-shirts and designs for video games.
You do it for the love of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic. And you also sent me some sketches here. Are these future ideas for shirts?
So I have done some Gears of War T-shirts. I did some for Saints Row and other video games. Usually this is how everything starts. Start with my little sketchbook, little thumbnails from there. And once something clicks, I keep going. And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And going down the line, immediately next to me here is Johanna Shaw. You go by the title Jill of All Crafts of the Shaw Asylum. And you make a variety of items. I have something here. This is some game-based jewelry that you made based on Scrabble. And you also have some dice. And full disclosure, this is one she actually made as a commission for me, a Triforce pendant. So, and other media as well. Monopoly, you do quilting a lot. You do a lot of quilting.
I used to do a lot of quilting. Quilting takes time, which I don't have as much of anymore.
Why is that?
Oh, grad school, 3 kids, life.
So this keeps you busy.
Everything keeps me busy.
So full disclosure, Joe is actually what inspired me with the idea for this panel, because I was visiting her house and she made an entire room of her house look like the forest temple from The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. So she has painting, she has wallpaper, she has decor, and
It's the video game room.
yeah, and the theme of video games in general doesn't stop with that room. Her kids are growing up in a Mario room, so wallpaper, quilts. Did you make that quilt?
No, that's just a blanket I bought, but it's not wallpaper. I actually painted all of the mural on there.
Wow, that is a handcrafted mural. Wow. And I'm going a little out of order here, back into the Zelda room. It's Christmas time always in your house, right? And,
It was when the picture was taken.
and is this another painting?
That's actually a puzzle. I put it together, and it was the exact right size to fit into the inside of that door for that cabinet.
Nice. And so what's the word when you make something, like that puzzle's not going to fall apart?
Oh, no, yeah, I used like Puzzle Saver and glue and saved it all together, and then I laid the cabinet down on its back, put the puzzle on and glued the crap out of it, put wax paper over top in case glue seeped out, and just loaded up old textbooks on top to weigh it down till it dried.
That's awesome. Thank you. Let's see, and then I'll save myself for last. Going next on the, wait, these are yours, right?
Yes.
Adri. Hi, Adri. So you are local as well. Johanna, wait, Chris, where are you from?
Born and raised here, but my father's from Puerto Rico, my mother's from Ecuador.
Cool. Hi. So, so most of us are local. Adri, you are also from these parts. Why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Adri. I mostly make jewelry. Sorry. Non-game crafting. I do a lot of like cards, like paper piecing, a lot more other jewelry, but we're mostly just focused on my game stuff.
Nice. So this is Zelda 64, right?
No, this is actually, a lot of my work is based on my own video games. This is for a game called Discover the World. It's based on Lich, the MMO.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So, yeah.
And you also have, this is Dragon Quest,
Yes, that's a Matsushaki.
one of my favorite RPGs of all time.
Mine
And,
too.
and I recognize this guy, but I can't place him.
This is also my personal logo for
Oh.
my video games. The font is the Infocom font, and then the Tiny Ninja is my logo.
Excellent, because Infocom, of course, making text adventures right in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And you're very involved with the local text adventure scene,
Yeah.
as well as Women in Games Boston.
Yes.
Very good, thank you. And who's this guy?
Cave Story. It's my mega.
Cave Story, nice. And then you have your own logo again,
And that is for, I don't remember the name of the game, but it was Gradient Studios. So there was another local game development team that made a game called Collide, I think it was actually, and that was their logo.
nice. And Bubble Bobble,
Yes.
one of my all-time favorite games. And is this Tetris?
Yes.
And is this a different medium from this here?
Well, the first one is magnets, so they're blocks. They're each individual blocks. I glued them together to make the tetronymos, and then painted them and added magnets. And then the other one is cross-stitch.
And then you cross-stitched it. Awesome. Thank you. And then finally, last but not least, Roberto Hoyos, who, full disclosure, I recently backed your Kickstarter.
Thank you.
And received in the mail my classic Apple pillow that you made. So this is several generations of Apple products here. I, of course, have the iconic 1977 Apple IIc pillow, which I absolutely adore. Very high quality. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So beyond that, introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Roberto Hoyos. I own a company called Throwboy. We make designer throw pillows inspired by the stuff people love. So we have lines like that, which was a big success on Kickstarter, all kind of tech-based, retro tech, I guess. We're doing some video game-inspired pillows. But I started the company 10 years ago by hand sewing pillows in my basement that looked like computer icons, and sort of found my niche, and people really loved it. So I started just kind of branching out and making anything people like into a nice quality, cool pillow that is like cool home decor. And yeah, Throwboy has like been my whole thing for the past decade.
Shall I show them the pillow you're coming out with soon?
Yes. I have a teaser right there too. Yeah, that's coming out actually day after tomorrow. We're gonna have that on the website to buy. And it's just throwboy.com.
Wise marketing to not release it on April Fool's Day.
Yeah, I know, right? Sometimes I forget, and I do accidentally release things on like Halloween or something, and then I'm like, oh shoot.
And you also have a podcast, right?
Right, yeah. So I also host a podcast called That Thing You Made, which is a podcast basically about turning art into products. A lot of my friends are other creators that have their own businesses, so we kind of got together, me and my friend Dennis, and we started a podcast basically about how do you take something that you love to make and market it and turn it into something that people can buy. And so that comes out every week. That Thing You Made is what it's called.
And you flew in from the West Coast for this event?
Yes, I'm here from Seattle. This is my first time in Boston. Your city's awesome. So thank you. It's been cool. Yeah, today was very windy, though. I wasn't prepared for that.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
So, and then there's me. I am Ken Gagne, your host. I make art that is not physical. I host the podcast Polygamer, where I interview diverse voices in the games industry. And I co-host the podcast Transporter Lock with my lovely captain right here, Sabriel Maston. It's a weekly show all about Star Trek. And I also host the YouTube channel Gamebits. And then I do have a physical print magazine, and not a PDF, but an actual paper magazine that you hold, about classic Apple computers, which is why I love that pillow so much. But I myself am not making arts and crafts of this sort. I have tried, and it did not end well. And I was not raised in a house where that sort of thing was taught or really available. And I wouldn't even know where to start if I were to do that today. So I'd like to know where each of my panelists acquired these skills. Like, when and where did you start, and how did you branch out? Why don't we start going the other way with Roberto?
Well, my grandmother taught me how to sew when I was very little, like 4 or 5 years old. She was a seamstress by trade. She was one of the first employees at REI, which is like a huge company now, but she was one of the beginning employees of that outdoor apparel company. So when I was really little, it was just something I acquired because I didn't really think it was out of the ordinary to be able to sew, I guess. And I would sew like clothes for my teddy bears and stuff like that. I didn't use that skill very often. I just, if I needed to mend something. But then I came up with the idea to make pillows that look like computer icons, and that turned into what I do now. But yeah, so that's kind of where I began.
Awesome, thank you. What about you, Adri?
So most of my work these days is in shrink plastic. So it's most of us have played with that as like little kids. It's still around. It's still a thing. So it's mostly shrink plastic and just a little bit of drawing. Or frequently I'll print out. I don't even have to like draw because I'm a terrible drawer. I'll print out a picture of what I want and then like trace it. So I totally cheat that way. Yeah, that's most of it. I've just been doing that forever.
Wow.
So.
When you say shrink plastics, is that what I would refer to as shrinky dinks?
Yes.
Great. I love shrinky dinks.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. What about you, Joe? You are a master of so many media. Or mistress, sorry.
I don't know if mistress is quite right, but I tried a lot of things and succeeded for the most part. Unlike you, I did grow up in a house where crafts were a thing. My mom did all sorts of different crafts, so I was exposed to a lot. Like I grew up being dragged to craft shows, and we would reverse engineer things and figure out how to do them better or cheaper or things like that. So it was always just kind of second nature. I think it made me not afraid of it. Like I have a good friend who says she's allergic to Michaels. Like if she needs to go in there because her kid wants to do something, she needs me to go with her as a tour guide. And that was just not my experience in life.
That's awesome. And you have branched out into multiple media. Like I've seen the Mario Kart birthday cakes that you bake for your kids, and the wallpapers and the murals that you make. Were you taught all those things as a kid, or you just sort of got the concept of how to learn art?
I watched a whole lot of HGTV, and so I've seen like a whole slew of, like my first quilt I made, the Monopoly quilt up earlier, I think. That was the first quilt I ever did. That was an answer to my boyfriend at the time, had made me a giant teddy bear for my birthday when we were first dating. So this was my present to him for our first anniversary when we were dating, because I had to top it because I'm slightly competitive. So I had watched a TV show on how to do quilts, and I already knew how to sew. So I was like, well, how hard can that be? And just did it.
Awesome. And so you've never, because I remember at one point you were interested in pursuing this professionally. You actually got into a school program, but you don't actually have formal education on this.
No. Kids happen instead.
Right. And they just disrupt everything in a wonderful way.
Sure, we'll go with that.
Gonzo, how did you get into shirts? Where does this art come from?
So as a young kid, I drew a lot. I just enjoyed drawing, making posters, and putting them all over my wall. And then around the time the Super Nintendo came out was probably when I had my own first console. So started drawing more video game stuff, more computer comic stuff. And once I got out of high school, college, that's when our recession hit. So it was a hard time finding a job in my field at the time. So to kind of fill the creative void, I just started creating stuff and went with it, and started Dapper Pixel to do t-shirts and video game inspired stuff. So I was big into Street Fighter, big into Super Metroid and all that. So just kept going from there.
Awesome, thank you. I'm very jealous of all your backgrounds. I have many more questions for you. There will also be time for Q&A. If you want to tweet questions during the panel, I'll be monitoring the hashtag PAXCraft. It's in the lower right corner there, so I'll be monitoring that stream if you have any questions for our panelists. Some of you work in multiple media, and I'm curious, when you have something that you want to make, what comes first? Is it you're saying, I want to make a shirt, I want to make a cake, what video game would be a cool inspiration? Or do you see something like Bubble Bobble or Monopoly and you say, how can I turn this into something real? So which comes first? Joe?
It depends on the project, really. A lot of, well, years ago, it would be more, oh, I saw a Monopoly thing and I wanted to figure out what I could make out of it. Now it's more like, okay, what have my kids demanded of me?
What do your kids demand of you?
Well,
Relevant to this panel.
my middle one's turning 7 next week, and he wants a Mario Kart themed birthday party. Conveniently, also my oldest for that same birthday did a Mario Kart theme, and I saved all the stuff, so that was easy.
Cool.
They ask me for shirts all the time too. Like there have been days when I've woken up and they've been like, "Oh, I need a shirt that says this for today," and it happens.
I know a guy who does shirts. Just saying. What about you, Adri?
Mostly it's the idea first. So it'll be like, I want a Magic Jockey charm. I'm going to make it. And usually when I do like other stuff, when I do cards, it's usually I'm going to make a card. Oh God, what can I put on it? But yeah, it's usually the inspiration first, and then I figure out.
And are there certain video games that are better or worse inspirations? For example, Cross Stitch seems very pixelated.
Yes.
So I would think that a 8-bit game would fit well for that medium as opposed to something more modern. Is that true?
Yeah, I definitely love doing pixel art for the cross stitch, and also just even for the jewelry, because I don't have to trace it. I can just like, put it on a grid, figure out exactly, and like draw it out, and then like color it in. So it's it's definitely a lot easier.
Cool. And what about you, Roberto? Are there certain video games that you think are better inspirations, or certain genres, years?
I think I just have to sort of educate myself like enough to be able to go, okay, I want to make a thing in that, pool of whatever it is, whatever the medium is. So if I'm like, okay, let me learn more about pixel art before I kind of dabble into it. But for what I do, that would be way harder to do onto a pillow because of the angles and things like that. So if I did want to do something like that, I'd probably end up making like a t-shirt or something else and just sort of like the pillow, if it's too angular for what I do, I kind of stay away from it. And since I pretty much just do pillows, I have to think in those constraints a lot.
Right. So, wow, that's really fascinating that it's really just the opposite, that it's not necessarily modern games are better than classic games, but the representation, like classic box art, for example, you might draw more inspiration from than classic screenshots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true. Yeah, because I don't want to compromise the aesthetic of what those things were represented by making it, oh, that kind of looks like it, but it's all lumpy and not like formed properly. Mm-hmm. So.
And sometimes you just have to be creative in your interpretations, like Atari 2600 box art never looked like the game.
Yeah, right.
But it was the most amazing box art.
Right, yeah.
Cool. Well, what about you, Chris? So, like when you're deciding what game should I put on a shirt next, or you're like, that game is not going to be a good shirt.
Yeah, each project's each design's gonna be a little bit different. I struggled with the Metroid T-shirt for the longest time. It was one of my favorite games, but I wanted to make sure it was a good shirt and design as well. And banging my head against it, and as an example, I just couldn't figure out the design. And then I figured out, well, what happens if I were to turn this video game and bring it into the real world? What way would I change it? And be like, I would make a danger sign, because no one wants to be near the Metroid. So constantly, sometimes I'll have to take a step back, breathe, and then let those things happen. But each project's gonna be a little bit different, and then just looking at it at a different angle can help. And worst comes to worst, you just put it aside for a little while and jump onto something else.
That's one of your shirts you're wearing now, right?
Yeah, got it on right now.
And is that a particular game? Is that the Metroid shirt?
Yeah, so a typical biohazard or hazard symbol is just the 3 circles. Took a step back, I realized, well, the Metroid does have those 3 cells or those 3 little spherical organs on the inside of it, and just kind of ran with that.
I assume you don't sell that as a biohazard shirt, because then people would think it's Resident Evil.
Exactly, yeah.
Right. And Johanna, you're also wearing something you made, correct?
Yes.
Is that something that can be seen from the audience?
No.
A Settlers of Catan skirt. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. And how did you prototype that? Like when you decide I do want to make something for PAX East, Settles of Catan is my inspiration, did you just immediately go to your loom or whatever it is you use?
The sewing machine?
That too?
Yeah, who has time for prototypes?
But like, what if you screw up? You need to know going in that you have some sort of a plan or a strategy, right?
I know how to sew, and I know how to work my cutting machine and my heat press for the vinyl, so, yeah.
So you don't make mistakes, is what you're saying.
Oh, no, I do sometimes. I just trust that it's not going to happen because I don't have time for that.
So what is, worst case scenario, in an alternate universe, if you had made a mistake making that skirt, what would you have done? Just like...
Made something else.
Just started over?
Yeah.
Wow.
What else could I do?
I don't... That's why I'm asking you. My goodness. Chris, how do you sketch... I mean, we saw a little bit of your sketchbook earlier. Is that your first stop toward making a shirt into a reality?
Oh yeah, it's usually typically paper and pencil. Go from there. It helps to have a grid for me, so usually work with that. The Nintendo-inspired line, that was very much about what's that image that everyone could relate to about the video game. And for Pokemon, it was the 3 starter Pokemon. Then went from there, so just putting them inside a Pokeball just seemed like a natural fit and kept going there.
Nice. And once you are confident with your sketches, what digital medium do you transport that into? Do you use like Photoshop?
So I'll scan my hand-drawn sketches into Illustrator, and I'll go from there. Illustrator is a vector-based software, so it makes sense to just go there. And most t-shirt companies, sticker companies, pin companies will work with Illustrator files to bring your work to life. And then before I actually kind of finalize, I make large prints of it off a printer or 8.5 by 11, whatever is convenient at the time, and then go from there.
Because if you order a pallet of shirts and they come in and you find that there's something wrong with them, you can't just pulp the whole run and start over.
And proofreading. The moment I put words on a t-shirt, I start freaking out. I'm like, I misspelled one thing and I ordered 1,000 of these shirts or something, and that tends to be a big fear of mine, but a lot of proofreading and having other people take a look at the work too to get feedback helps.
Have you ever had an issue where the error was not yours but with the printers?
No, sometimes it'll just be the quality. Sometimes the inks aren't there, so you can address that with manufacturers or whoever's helping you create that medium. But for the most part, luckily, knock on wood, I've been pretty fortunate to not have big mistakes happen.
Awesome. And Roberto, you're in a similar boat where once you order that pillow, it better be right. So what is the process from concept to production? Where do you prototype your ideas?
I'm a lot like Gonzo. I start with pen and paper or pencil and paper. I like to make what I call visual lists. So if I have a lot of ideas that I want to do, I'll end up making like a grid and then drawing like a crappy little sketch of each thing just so I can go, okay, that would look good as a collection. Those things don't work. And then I pare it down and actually start sketching for real. And I have to be very precise because I have, measurements. So it's like, okay, this is this long, this is 8 inches and whatnot. And sometimes I'll even do like paper. I'll take basically like wadded up paper and try to get an idea of like how big is this gonna look, and like put tape around it and like put it on the couch and step away and be like, yeah, I think it's big enough, but it needs to be a little bit bigger. So I need to see it in 3 dimensions to be able to go, okay, this is going to work. I did that for the iconic pillow collection. I have a bunch of like wadded up paper bags and stuff to figure out like what that was going to look like. And then if I have sketches, I'll usually actually just start all over and do it in Photoshop and actually get real measurements down. Then I send those to my factory, and then we take it from there to actually make the prototype pillows. When I started, I would do the whole process because I would actually sew everything myself, but now I pretty much design them, and then they get made into 3-dimensional pillows, and then I have to approve, each step along the way. So yeah, it's a long process, but you have to be just very like meticulous and not let up for your quality, because that's what you have to live by, for everything.
So that Apple II pillow that I just got in the mail, you pretty much already had that design, of course, by the time you went to Kickstarter. So from the very concept through the Kickstarter, through me receiving it in my hands, how long was that?
10 months I was working on the whole thing, from, just the idea to actually making them. Like I said, I kind of figured out what they were going to look like. I looked at the old products. I found like any photographs that I could reference to see every angle, because I don't have half of those things, the real products.
Do you need an Apple II? I can hook you up.
Are you going to hook me up?
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, call me.
Okay. Yeah, so I didn't have anything like that, but I found a lot of archival photos, because every one of those that you see have detail on every side. So like, you have one, you can see the bottom is, different than the sides and whatnot. So, 10 months. All of those that you're seeing there that were marketed on Kickstarter, those were one of a kind. And then, in the event that we got funded, which we did, we were going to produce all of them. So it's sort of like smoke and mirrors, like, oh yeah, we have this. It's like we have one.
Now, fortunately, Adri, I presume that the stakes are a little bit lower for you. You're not raising
yeah.
tens of thousands of dollars. So if you make a mistake, you can probably just start over and deal with the frustration.
For the most part, yes. I mean, if it's a card or something, I put a lot of work into those, and I would probably try first. If it's jewelry, then okay. Like sometimes it just doesn't like shrink properly, or it just doesn't come out, or like I definitely have, but the material is so cheap, and it takes like half an hour. That's not a big deal.
And for your creations, Adri, are you conceiving of those originally, or are you like looking online for templates, ideas, things that other people have done that you can easily replicate?
There's a combination. If it's a video game thing, then I'm probably working from like, I'm Googling. Well, I mean, I'm always Googling for images. Like even if I'm making like, one of my pieces is like a dragon card, which I should have included because D&D. I basically just looked at a lot of like, I didn't include it, sorry. Not that one.
Oh, I know, but it's close.
I will do a lot of Googling, get some inspiration, try to figure out what will lend itself well. And then I'll freehand what I can sometimes, and then if I like that, I definitely can't reproduce. If I draw something, I can't draw it again. It's just like, I'm not a good drawer. So it's just like a freak accident that it came out well. So I'll usually scan that and then print it in whatever size I need.
So everything you make is unique.
Yes.
Cool. Johanna, I know with quilting, there are very often patterns that you can download. Is that right?
There are, but they're typically like the more Amish quilt patterns you see, where it's repetitive blocks, like star blocks and log cabin blocks, things like that. For doing something like the Monopoly quilt, I just took a ruler and the Monopoly board and made it 16 times the size of an actual board.
That's easy enough.
Yeah.
And you brought a quilt with you today, didn't you?
I have the Monopoly quilt down here.
Oh, can we see that? 16 times bigger. Have you ever actually played Monopoly on it?
Once. Yeah, you might have been there.
Maybe?
It was in the apartment on Halfveld. We sat in the middle of it and played.
Oh my goodness.
Wow, that is massive.
So it's dingy because my kids use it every day and it's 20 years old. But I wasn't thinking when I made something white. Yep.
Well, and you probably weren't thinking that you'd be showing it off at PAX 20 years later.
I did not know what PAX was then, no.
I don't think PAX existed 20 years ago. So, let's see. So we talked about, if you make a mistake, you can, either proofread it or you just get over it. Have you ever made a piece of art that didn't come out as well as you hoped? Like there were no mistakes, but you're like, oh, in my head that looked so much cooler. And if that happened, how did you deal with that? Chris? I'm sorry, Gonzo?
Yeah, I guess that's while I start everything in a little sketchbook to just get ideas out of my head to begin with and see how it looks on paper. It usually doesn't end up the way I originally thought or the way I originally imagined. I remember doing the Street Fighter t-shirt design. Took one of the longest because it was a constant battle of like, that's not exactly what I was looking for. I was trying to convey, going to a tournament, but nothing was hitting, and had to leave it to the side, work on other things, just get the creative juices in another area, focused on another thing. But there are times where I just abandon designs altogether. Just like, it's not working right now, just leave it aside and just don't beat yourself up for it. Just kind of it's okay. Let yourself breathe for a little while there, and then maybe just go play a video game.
Because I imagine that sometimes you might be like, okay, that didn't turn out as well. That is a good interpretation. On the other extreme, you might think that thing is a failure. And it might be difficult to divorce the idea from your creation being a failure and yourself being a failure.
Exactly.
You just have to keep making more things.
Yeah, and it's while failure can be seen as a bad word, in all honesty, you need to do bad things sometimes. You need to fail sometimes because at the end of the day, you just try to regain your strength, stand back, get back up and say, well, I learned something from this, and let's keep moving.
Yeah, because the taste you have that allows you to discern whether what you've made is good or not is the taste that allows you to create great things. And that's what sets you apart from a bad artist. A bad artist might create something bad and not know it. Right?
I hope that I can realize when I've done something really bad.
Well, what about you, Joe? Have you ever made something that didn't turn out quite as well as you hoped?
Actually, that Triforce necklace that you commissioned,
What?
it drove me nuts that I couldn't get the points closer because I didn't like the spacing on it. But when I did that, I was actually learning the technique. I was working with a metalsmith as an apprentice one night a week after work. And she was a super geek too, so she got really excited about the prospect of this necklace. And we worked and tried to figure out the best way to get those settings closer so that it would be like a true Triforce, and just with them being open to start and then having to close them on the stone. There was no way we could figure out how to do it.
So the way that you dealt with your failure was to sell it to me.
Exactly. It's not a total failure if I still get your money.
Moving on.
I hope you'll still be my friend.
We'll see about that. Adri, how do you deal with the emotional component of things not working out the way you hoped?
It depends on the project. So not included are pictures are the fact that I used to try to make stencil T-shirts. I actually have a NetHack one, which came out really well. But I tried to do one for my video game, Discover the World, and it even came out fine. But I did it 5 or 6 times. I went through a whole bunch of T-shirts, a lot of paint, and finally got one. And then it just didn't look like it on me because it stretched and looked terrible. And that was kind of I spent so much time and kind of a lot of money trying to work this out, and so that was kind of crushing, but I just haven't tried since. That was sort of my I can't think of the word. My reaction was to just give up.
Okay, I mean, and that can be valid, but you have other creative outlets, so it's not like you gave up on art.
Right, yeah.
You're just okay, maybe that's not my strength, let's focus on something that is. That's valid, because you can't most people can't do everything, but you can certainly try. And Roberto, pillows, when they don't work out, do you just have a giant pillow fight?
They always work out, Ken. Yeah, I definitely had some ones that mentally I'm oh yeah, that was a dud. I didn't like that one. It didn't come out right, whatever. But I think over time, I realized my best asset, and any creator's best asset, is just your creative mind. That's what's going to get you out of any hole. That's what's going to get you going. Trying to feed something that maybe you made something that was a hit that you don't even like anymore. You shouldn't just perpetuate and keep doing it and doing it and doing it, and it just sort of kills your soul. And if you're a creative person, you need to keep that super protected. You need to always have those ideas buzzing. So yeah, I've had some ones in the last couple years that I didn't like, but you just move on and liquidate them and just put them on sale and just keep going, and don't let your customers know that you think that they weren't that good, because you don't want them to think they bought something that you think sucked. But it's just part of business. Not everything is going to sell well, not everything's going to hit well. But I think when you go into it and you're making them one by one, you want every single thing to sell well. And I've been there too. But, you get cuts and bruises and you keep going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's this YouTube artist named Jonathan Mann, Song a Day Man. He composes and records an original song every single day, 365 days a year. I think he once estimated that 60% of his songs are okay, 20% are utter crap, and 20% are amazing. You know, and he's aiming for that 20%, and that's what keeps him going.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a question about sales and copyright, because when you're creating something for yourself, for your house, for your children, you don't have to worry about that. Sometimes you are monetizing it. Sometimes you're running a Kickstarter or running an online store or selling it to the person sitting next to you. And you have to think about, you know, this is a Metroid shirt. Metroid is very heavily copyrighted by Nintendo, and they will come down on you. Apple is another big entity you don't want to mess with. And here you are selling pillows that look like a fruit computer. So how do you work around that? Let's start with Gonzo.
Oh yeah, before I really went in, I did a lot of research and asked a lot of questions on forums of exactly how far could I go and what boundaries could I push. I couldn't use any names even mentioned in video games type of thing, so I kind of sneaked one away with the Oak Labs, but that's where I kind of found inspiration too. I found what my limits were, and I had to work around it. So, you know, especially for the Zelda shirt, while it looks kind of close to, you know, the Hyrule Shield and everything we've seen in the video games, it's my own interpretation of it. I sat there and I sketched everything out. I found something that I wanted to have my twist, my flavor on that. And for the Street Fighter one that I did, the World Warrior, as I called it, just thought of a poster and how would I get other quote-unquote fighters to come and be a part of this tournament, and just tantalize them with this idea of, you're going to go to Brazil to have a fight, and you know, you're going to have to take down these 4 legends, and just go from there. And, it was a lot of research at the beginning, finding out, you know, like, while it's a bummer I can't use exactly what I want, just use that to your advantage, and make sure whatever you're creating, everyone can still relate to that and understand it's coming from from that game.
So your online store doesn't say Street Fighter shirt.
No, this is for a World Warrior t-shirt. So,
Gotcha. And does that impact search engine optimization? Do people make it harder to find your shirt?
no, I mean, but I still put tags. The tags are still going to be there for Street Fighter when you're searching for stuff. But the actual, even on the page though, it will say inspired by the Street Fighter series, inspired by the Metroid series. But everything is original, hand-drawn, and on my own.
Cool, thank you. What about you, Johanna? I know once upon a time you had a Facebook page where you were making jewelry and accepting commissions. Did you have to think about copyright?
So back when I had my jewelry business, I did think about that. So really the only game-inspired pieces I did that I was trying to sell were just using game pieces. I had things with dice and Scrabble tiles and trying to stay away from anything that had any major trademark on it. Yeah, I saved that for selling to you.
So the individual pieces, like the Triforce piece, that was a commission. You never had to put up on your store and say, Legend of Zelda necklace, here you go.
Right, it wasn't public, so I figured it was pretty safe.
All under the table.
Right.
And you had the Scrabble earrings that I pulled up earlier. Mm-hmm. I mean, those are very clearly not just inspired by Scrabble. They are an actual element from the board game that you are reselling. Does copyright come into play when you're actually reappropriating assets like that?
It might have been flirting with the edge of what's safe and not for copyright law, but if my jewelry business was ever big enough that Scrabble would have noticed me, I'd still be doing it.
Because I presume that these are not you duplicating Scrabble pieces. You actually bought the Scrabble pieces and are just reselling them.
Oh yeah, I went to a yard sale and bought Scrabble games. Yeah.
Yeah, so that should be fine. Just like you can buy a game at a GameStop, and when you're done playing it, you resell it. Although certain publishers wouldn't want you to do that either. But.
Right.
Cool. What about you, Adri? Do you sell your pieces?
I do not. Partly just because I want everything to. I make most things either for myself or as a gift, so I want them to be unique. I mean, I'm open to commissions, but that would still just be a one-off. It would never be like a mass-produced sort of thing.
So you're not going to like turn your entire second bedroom into a production facility with boxes of stack to the ceiling?
God, no.
You don't see any fun in that? I'm sure the post office would love you. So, Roberto, so as I mentioned, these are pillows inspired by classic computers and game consoles. How much do you worry about copyright?
I try to do my research, like, usually I kind of see what's out there, you know, like for this, for example, this pillow in front of me, I don't know if you can see it in the back, but I looked into it and I'm like, okay, there's a lot of people making like generic controllers, so the design is not seeming to be like a problem for people to be using. Like you can get a shirt that looks like that and it says like kicking it old school or something, but it's not licensed at all, you know? So I try to do my research and just in terms of where I want to go. I don't get like really overt with it and like take a character and make it, because that's obviously like a licensed thing. And then as far as the other stuff, like the computer pillows that you were showing earlier, I just was thinking that these are so like non-relevant right now that I don't think that they're really gonna care. So sometimes I do take risks, and especially like if I did a Kickstarter, I was like, what's the worst that can happen? I can get a cease and desist, and I'll be like, all right, I won't do it, you know? So I kind of put it out there, I try it, and so far it's been totally fine. I don't focus my whole company on those things. So I don't know. That's kind of how I feel. I'm more like try it and then, you know, see if you get in trouble. Like if you do, then okay. But no, I still don't put names. I don't say like this is an Apple pillow, you know, because that's just dumb. Like you shouldn't do that if that's what you're trying to do. You can definitely take inspiration from things without it being like so overtly like you're trying to claim this is a, you know, licensed product. That's how I roll.
So I have already forgotten, even though I backed the Kickstarter, did you use the capital A word anywhere in that Kickstarter?
I did not, no. And some blogs that covered it were like, he was very careful about never saying that. And yeah, I mean, you can do, I'm not the only person that's ever done this kind of stuff. There's whole companies that make, you know, inspired by such and such. There's a company out of Boston called Johnny Cupcakes, and it's completely like that. It's just appropriating something out of pop culture and like turning it into their own logo. And it is a, you know, it is a method of turning something you know, like inspired by something into a new product. And so, like I said, I look around and go, okay, I guess they're doing it. I'll try it, you know, like, because there's a lot that you have to be to get on somebody's radar to make you be like, oh, we're going to shut this down, you know?
Yeah. So if Apple listens to the audio of this podcast, this show, you're done.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's been nice knowing you.
Yeah, feed over right now.
Oh, very much so. So let's see. I have a question about how much time and effort it takes to make these things. My friend Terry Ann recently made a quilt, and she spent so many hours creating it that she realized her time was so valuable she'd have to sell the quilt for like $500, and nobody wanted to spend that much. And she couldn't just part with it for less than that, and after spending so much time creating it, she was okay keeping it herself. So how do you decide after creating something whether or not to let it go? Joe?
Well, at this point, pretty much everything I create is, you know, for myself to keep or for my kids or for a gift or something. So I already know going in on what I'm making, whether it's staying or going. Back when I did jewelry and attempted to make money with it, for the most part, I would make things that I was planning to sell, and you know, a lot of them are still in my jewelry closet now because they didn't sell, and so I wear them. But for the most part, I know going in what my plan is.
And even though you previously made that decision, do you get to the end and find, oh, this is going to be harder than I thought?
Oh yeah, that happens sometimes. I'm like, it's a classic me move to like underestimate how long something is going to take. So yeah, there were, I think some of the pieces I made, especially ones that took a lot of wire work and things like that, didn't sell because I had to price them so high just to cover the time that went in.
Have you ever priced it so high because you didn't want to sell it?
No. I have been secretly happy when things didn't sell, but I never purposely did that.
You've never sabotaged yourself.
If I was going to do that, why bother even putting it out? I would just keep it if I thought it wouldn't sell anyway.
Adri?
Pretty much the same thing she said. Is that okay? Yeah, I mean, I make everything. I know where it's going to go already. So if it's a gift, I mean, I love my friends. I want them to have something nice. So it doesn't really matter how much time I put into it, and I'm not pricing it for anyone else, so it's not a big deal.
And since it's a gift, it may be more meaningful the more time you put into it. That's what's like, oh, here's something I whipped together for 5 minutes. Here you go. Mm-hmm. Nice. And I presume it's just the opposite with Roberto and Gonzo, where you are mass producing these things. So if they all go out the door, you still have one for yourself. You'd never want to hold on to all 10,000 of them.
No, and that if I have that many on, they're going on sale pretty quick.
Fire sale, everything must go. No, same thing over here.
Yeah. I mean, the time, I kind of just start learning how to manage the time better in terms of like, how is it going to go from idea to product, sort of have a calendar idea of like, oh, this will take like a 3-month period or whatever. But yeah, then when they get put into the sort of the mass production cycle, you just have them being made. But for the first, I don't know, 4 or 5 years when I was literally cutting, sewing, and stuffing and packaging and sending everything myself, I wasn't tracking my time at all. People would be like, oh, how long does it take you to make a pillow? I'm like, I don't know, like an hour, 2 hours. Like, I don't know. It probably took a long time. I did it in an assembly line fashion. But I think I sort of excuse it by saying, well, I'm building out my brand, over this time period, instead of being like, this is how much each task takes. So there is sort of like, you can excuse it for that,
Yeah, no, I would say no matter what your day job is, even in that environment, you should always be tracking your time so that you know what tasks take a lot of time, what clients take a lot of time, and that way you can bill appropriately. So that's very important. So you've talked about some of the challenges, the struggles, the opportunities, and the considerations that you have to make. I started off by saying that I don't have these talents or these experiences. What advice would you give to somebody like me who wants to get into an art or a craft? And which one would you recommend they start with, and how do they start there? Adri?
Oh, gosh.
You want me to start?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
I guess it really just depends on your interests. Like, I would say anyone could cross-stitch, probably. I mean, and that's pretty easy. You get a pattern, and it's time-consuming, though. But it's probably a good place to start. I'm like the only person I know who can't knit or crochet, so I'm not going to suggest. I can't. I've tried. But I think other people would probably be like, start here, because that's also a good place to start. Look at tutorials online, look at examples of things you like, that sort of thing.
I was given a crochet kit for Christmas one year, and there actually is a place in my town that will teach you how to sew, which I realize is not crochet, but still a valuable skill to have. So there are online tutorials and there are offline classes as well.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Gonzo, what would you recommend for somebody who wants to get crafty?
Find out which medium helps, or is easy, not necessarily easiest, but that you enjoy working with too, I've always loved coloring and drawing from a young age, so if that's what you're into, I mean, if you're into Legos and you love building things, maybe you get into crafting with, and you watch carpentry videos and things like that. So whatever you enjoy working with your hands or on a computer, start with that, and then what you enjoy about that video game, what you enjoy about that experience of that story, and then see, it's going to take a lot of practice and failure along the way, but that's part of it, and you're gonna have to enjoy that part of it as well, the highs and the lows when you're doing this.
It resonated when you said Legos, because I love Legos. And my friend Maya loves Legos, and she makes custom miniature figures of famous scientists and then gives them to the scientists.
That's incredible.
And she actually got a kit accepted by Lego, and now the Women of NASA is an actual Lego kit.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
So you never know what stars you might reach. Joe, where would you recommend I start?
With something you love. I mean, it's easier to put in the time and effort for something if it's something you're really interested in. Pick something that interests you and then look at what kind of craft might apply to that. Also, don't be afraid of it. Like, if you want to paint a mural, like we had my son's room up with the Mario level room, it's just paint. Like, if you screw it up, then you paint over it. Like, most of the things you could try craft-wise aren't permanent. It's not going to end the world if you make a mistake.
Yeah.
So you're suggesting I not start with tattoos?
Probably not a good plan.
Good. Well, at least not on myself. Okay. Roberto. Where should I start? Should I start making pillows?
Tattoos, actually. I think I was going to echo what Joe said. Yeah, I think you need to pare it down to be what you really want to make. Be very specific. If you want to make whatever Pokeball or something, just be very specific, and then start figuring out what medium you want to make it in. That certainly helped me. If I would have just sort of picked too broad of a thing, I think it would have probably psyched me out. So see something online that you want, maybe go on Etsy and see what people are doing to kind of get your brain going. And then as far as reverse engineering how they did it, just YouTube it and see what people are doing, how they did it.
Cool. I mean, just like YouTube can be a form of community, so can offline communities. My co-working space, where I spend my day job hours, has a monthly craft night, and I would crochet there. And then they stopped hosting that night, and I stopped crocheting because I had nobody egging me on to keep me honest. So I would certainly recommend finding somebody you can do it with, and perhaps even learn from.
That's a good idea.
The crochet night that I went to, they were all very patient with me. And they were like, let me get that purl started for you, and then hand it over to me. I'm like, okay, now you do the easy part, and once you've mastered that, I'll show you what I did, so then you can do it on yourself.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I do want to spend the next 10 minutes with Q&A. Instead of having people line up, I'm going to walk around with this mic. And so if you have a question, just raise your hand. Thank you also for Helene and Jesse, who asked questions over Twitter. So if anybody has a question, who has a question? Any questions? Yeah, there's one. Let me come to you. Hello, I'll hold it for you.
So I have a question regarding the design of T-shirts. I was planning to have some shirts made with ice sublimation. I was just wondering what kind of design considerations do you need to have because of the shirt and stuff like that?
Yeah, some things to keep in mind is the size of shirts, but other times is knowing how the colors are going to go on the shirts as well. If you're looking to blend colors or something along those lines, it's a little more involved in how you create your screens. So for myself, when I'm making these T-shirts, we have to break everything down by color, and that also can affect price and of making the shirts. So number of colors, size of the design itself. Some manufacturers or some T-shirt producers will let you know if you're bigger than 12 inches by 18 inches, it's an added charge as well. So that's something you have to keep in mind. There's a lot of talking with the people making the shirts and the creation of the shirts on, what my limits are, what's going to cost me a little bit more, and then, it's a little give and take of that with your design. While, you want to give the best design you can, just understand that there might be benefits or, negatives to going bigger and things like that.
Cool. So let me see if anybody else has a question. Hands. Yeah. Okay. So here, take one of these cards, and on the back is a Steam code. You just won a game. Thank you. And back here, we have another question. Hi.
What do you do when inspiration fails you? Like, you see something you want to do, but then you just can't think of anything to do it with.
That's a good one. A slight switch on what we previously discussed. Go for that.
I have no problem having to step away from something. While it does hurt to sit there and say, I spent a lot of time just sketching over and over and over again. There are times where you got to let yourself take a breath and understand. You got to step back and say, hey, I tried. That's what's really important right now. I'm going to learn something from this. I need to step away. Sometimes that spark will happen later, but I can't emphasize enough being able to step back and let yourself compose yourself and understand that it's, like everyone said before, it's not the end of the world. It's okay. Just give yourself some time to relax and breathe, and hopefully it comes to you.
I try to show it to people too, like a close circle of people that will have helpful feedback that aren't just going to be like, that's awesome, and then I get led down the wrong path. But I think ultimately you do have to listen to your own voice, because if you're doing something cool, it's probably a little crazy and weird, so you have to sort of just follow it. But yeah, sometimes I'll just show it to a few people, and some people, you have to find the right tribe that's going to actually tell you that, oh no, that's not really that cool, you know, and not take it personally and just go, okay, well, either I feel really good about it and I have a gut feeling that I'm going to try it, or I'm going to, and it fails, then it fails. You know, you have to be comfortable with that side of it.
All right, I have a card. Thank you. I actually have one related question, which is it legitimate, in your opinion, to look at what other people have done for ideas and inspiration, or is that stealing?
Oh, I absolutely. If there's something I want to do, like, I will check Etsy, like, first, just to get an idea of, like, whether it's doable. Especially if I'm doing, like, a lot of, like, cutting work, like, for paper, I will definitely, like, just take, I mean, most of what I do, I can't really find that, but I can get the idea of, like, what would be a good shape. And I definitely, like, take a look and see if it's available and what to avoid, because maybe somebody else has done it, or, yeah.
Is that true for you as well, Joe?
I will definitely take inspiration from things I've seen. Like my latest obsession crafting-wise is my cutting machine and using my heat press with the vinyl and making shirts and things like that. And so friends have figured out that I like doing these things, so they'll find like a meme on Facebook and send it to me and say, hey, I want this on a shirt. And so I'll take that wording and then, you know, lay it out and pick a font and, you know, put a design spin on it, but, you know, take the wording that they thought was hilarious and make a shirt out of it.
Cool, thank you. I saw one more hand, and this will be our last question. Hi.
Kind of almost asked the question. Building off that exact same question, do you ever get discouraged when you see that someone has done something that you thought was really cool and original, and you're like, oh, like 5 other people have already done it?
Good
Sometimes
question.
I do. Yeah, I definitely have had things that were in my head, or I'll talk to somebody about, maybe like my brother or something, and then wake up one morning and it's all like basically the same ideas on a blog, and I'm like, like I guess I waited too long. But he encouraged me. He's like, yeah, but you're going to do it your own way. You're going to do it better. So don't even worry about that. Because there's a million shoe companies. It doesn't mean there has to be one shoe company. You know, there's varying degrees of quality for everything, and brands and whatever. So I don't try to take it too hard, because not every idea, I mean, there's like no idea is original. So, you know, you can keep going and make it your own way. That's how I feel.
Also, with the,
Oh, sorry.
Joe?
thanks. With that, you can take it as validation that, like, hey, this, you know, is actually a good idea. Other people thought this was decent. This is, you know, the thing I thought of wasn't crap.
Yeah, since I don't sell, it's not really a problem. It's just, it basically just comes down to that point, like, the time and effort I put into it is that compared to what they're selling it for, would I rather support them or make it myself, is basically at that point what it comes down to.
One of my challenges is having reasonable expectations for myself. So I went to one of those paint nights, and, you know, half the fun of that is you get drunk. But I don't drink, so I was very sober and aware of how bad my painting was. And I'm like, how come all these drunk people are painting better than me? I hate this. I suck at this. I don't ever want to do this again. But I nonetheless have this TARDIS spinning through space that I painted that's hanging on my wall. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's not great, but I made it, and I was sober. And that's not something anybody else can say. So it's mine. So that brings us to the end of our panel. I want to give all our panelists one more opportunity to remind you who they are and where to find them online. Roberto?
My name is Roberto Hoyos. You can find everything I do at throwboy.com, and you can listen to my podcast on Apple Podcasts, That Thing You Made.
I'm Adri. I'm on Twitter as genericgeekgirl. If you want to see like more of my non-game stuff or other, just ping me on Twitter, and I have a link. So.
I'm Johanna Shaw. You can find pictures of my kids wearing things I made for them on Facebook. I have a Twitter handle, but I almost never use it.
Christopher Gonzalez, Instagram and Twitter, you can find me at dapperpixel.com. And if you go to Big Cartel, just look up Dapper Pixel and you'll be able to find my shirts on there as well.
Cool. My name is Ken Gagne. You can find me on Twitter at Gamebits. Some of our panelists brought some of their arts and crafts to show off, so if you want to get a closer look at their work, feel free to meet them in here or in the hallway afterward. Thank you so much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your PAX.
Thank you, guys.